Namaste, welcome. Sorry for the technical difficulties. And so welcome to Satsang again. And I wanted to use this time to kind of catch up. I've got loads of questions by email. So I want to catch up with some of those, and then we'll have some time for questions here in the room and online as well. So I'll see if I can get through at least 3 or 4 of these. Okay, can you hear me okay online? Good, thank you. It's always good to check. Okay, so the first one says, hi Helen, I'll try to keep this short. You have a course called Dissolving the Ego. Don't we need at least a bit of ego to be able to function effectively in the world? Best wishes. Well, long and short answer is yes and no. So one of those easy ones, right? So we're off and running. Dissolving the ego, at least in the way that I'm using the term, is to dissolve the very rigid structures of our ego. So our ego is, the way I'm using the term, or mind, is some very rigid ways of thinking about things. So usually karmic patterns we're talking about here, certain ways of thinking about ourselves and the world and our awakening. So dissolving the ego is really just dissolving the habitual ways we think about something or think about ourselves and think about everything else. And when that has dissolved, the mind is then free to move, to think original thoughts, to think new thoughts, to think thoughts that it wouldn't have access to otherwise, because they're usually too high a frequency for this, for what we call the rigid structure of ego. So yes, you do need to be able to think to a certain extent. It's useful, so it's useful to be able to remember what's on your shopping list, or to remember to write a shopping list, or whether you need to turn left or right at the junction you're coming to in the car. But also at the same time, that's just going to happen automatically anyway. So it's a yes and no answer. But for the purpose of your question, whoever sent this in, what remains when the ego is dissolved is a functional software program that we could call mind or ego. It's much more functional, able to do what it's supposed to do in the first place, which is to help the body navigate through life. So yes, in some ways, you're correct. We're only talking about dissolving those thought patterns that no longer serve us, that keep us in a very limited experience of life over and over again, limited experience of a relationship, or limited ability to enjoy ourselves or have fun, or whatever it is that we're trying to achieve. We keep seeming to experience the same thing over and over again. This is where an egoic pattern is really playing. So yes and no, but mostly yes. Okay, next one. Dear Helen, over the past few weeks, I have been noticing a significant amount of resistance to my coursework, not in doing it necessarily, but in the stories of relativity. I recognize that relativity is the self's masterpiece, which is why I'm frustrated with the resistance being there. But it's becoming harder and harder to sit with what I'm learning in my psychology and natural science classes. I just want to scream, you're making all of this up. But then again, I'm doing the same thing with this separate self, aren't I? I'm finding it a bit disheartening, struggling with these classes when I have aspirations of becoming a therapist. I've tried to reframe and see this as just a different perspective or shade of truth, which it is, but that's not helping the resistance. Maybe there's some feeling that I'm spending more time on what isn't fulfilling in contrast to focusing on your teachings. Any insight would be appreciated. So I'm assuming that you need these classes to kind of, you need these classes to kind of fulfill this role as a therapist that you want to do. So it'd be frustrating because you can't seem to find the motivation to do what you need to do in this situation. And yes, we were all making it all up, aren't we? But also, as you said, all of this is the play of the self. This relative world of existence is the self showing up this way. So I would, if I was in your position, I would look at why something has labeled this study that you're doing as not as important as the work that you're doing in Satsang, the journey that we're coming through in Satsang and in awakening in general. Why is that? You've put, maybe there's some feeling that I'm spending more time on what isn't fulfilling in contrast to focusing on your teachings. So why isn't that fulfilling? Why is listening to Satsang feeling so much nicer? And why is doing this work that you want to do feeling less than fulfilling or less fulfilling? What is that about there? And I think if you dig down into that, you'll find that there's something inside saying that this is less important, that the work you're doing to become a therapist is less important than the Satsang. And that seems to be true at a certain level, but there's always going to be human beings that are still in separation, isn't there? You know, there's always going to be some beings. And with that separation, that belief in being a separate being, there's going to come a lot of issues with that, a lot of negative emotions, a lot of things that need working through with a therapist. And yes, we're making it all up because we aren't really separate beings and never have been. But I myself, as long as with many others, wouldn't be in this place now without the help of qualified therapists, counselors in the past, you know, been through some very dark times as a separate being, as I'm sure we all have, and hence the fact we're sitting here now listening to this. So why is that being labeled as less important? Because it's fulfilling. It's going to be as fulfilling as you think it's important, right? If you take that inside, why is this not really so fulfilling? It's got to be some idea that we've had about, or that's been labeled as this thing is really important and therefore deeply satisfying and fulfilling. And we could apply this across the board, whether we're talking about this person's coursework or our job or whatever it is that we don't want to do that seems less important than Satsang. Remembering that everyone is showing up here, they're already the self. And everyone we're working with is the self, and they're all in Satsang, whether they still think they're a separate being or not. The only difference is now we're consciously participating in our own Satsang, in our own evolution, you know, so that is going to be faster. But everyone's in Satsang, everyone's experiencing what it's like to be a separate being, the highs and the lows of that, the ups and the downs, the good bits about it and the not so good bits about it. So in a way, you'd be doing something very similar to what I'm doing. You're just going to be perhaps more talking to people who still feel they're a separate being. If you look at why it's not fulfilling, I think if you dig down into that, why is this more important and this less important? It'll be the thoughts you have about it, like anything. It's not the actual coursework or the subjects, is it, that you're doing? With any activity, it's what we think about it that's going to determine how much we can enjoy that activity or not. So hope that helps with that one. Anything that you're doing becomes equally joyful in the end because there's no thoughts about it. So you're participating from the open space of awareness as the self, and everything, the joy comes from in being, not from doing, or not from doing certain things and not doing other things. I seem to be talking with my hands a lot tonight. So next one, I know that the present moment is all that exists. The past is no longer, the future not yet. So do you have any advice on staying fully in the present? Thank you. Well, I wouldn't even try to stay in the present. it really, even what you've said here, we could go even deeper into that, the present is all there is. There isn't any such thing as past or future. It's not that the past is gone. You've never really experienced the past, have you? When you've experienced anything in your life, it happened with this nowness. So if you think about anything that happened to you yesterday, when you were experiencing it, it felt like it was happening now. You've never actually got to yesterday or even a second ago. And similarly with the future, you when you experience anything tomorrow, it's going to feel like it's happening now. You can't get outside of that now, can you? It's just constant. If I could somehow put you 10 years in the future, 10 years today, same time, whatever you were doing or experiencing, it would feel like it's happening now. There'd be this constant background nowness. This is happening to me now. Whatever this is, wherever my body is, it's happening now, this thing. So if you really start to understand that, then it takes the challenge out. Staying in the now is impossible. Staying in the present is impossible to do. Noticing that it's always this present moment is much easier and much more satisfying and fulfilling. So even if I'm sat here and I start to think about something that happened to me 10 years ago, I'm still right here and right now, and I'm thinking about it now. And if I imagine something that's going to happen a year from now, I'm still imagining it now. Phew. So if you start to see you can't get outside of this now, that even this effort to stay fully in the present, and I get what you mean here. How do I stay fully in the present? The easiest way is to recognize that's the only time available. You know, there's a now and a later and a before on the clock, isn't there? But it doesn't really exist in reality. Has this moment that we're experiencing now changed since we started this satsang? Our bodies might have moved and things, you know, words are being said, but has this moment ever ended? When does this present moment end? And did it ever begin? Is there really any such thing except in mental constructs of past, present, and future? They seem to be, don't they? They seem to be. But even when you think about the future, which is all you can do, because you can never experience the future, even when you think about the future or the past, you're thinking about it now, right here, right now. And I really started to investigate like this. I realized I cannot get outside of this present moment. Even if my attention was to wander to thoughts for 10 minutes, I was completely lost in thoughts, completely ignored the present moment for 10 minutes. It was all happening inside that present moment, this present moment now. So it's much simpler than perhaps you might be thinking. And I wouldn't put too much effort into trying to stay fully present, because boy, did I try that one, and tried it for about 5 years. And eventually came to this conclusion that I'm saying, no, it's impossible. Any attempt to stay where you already are is going to make you feel further away. Not actually further away, but just feeling further away, feeling very disturbed, feeling not at peace. Because you're trying to go somewhere to get to where you already are, trying to travel some distance in order to stay right here. And that's a little insane when we think about it, really, isn't it? But we're all doing it. Instead of trying to stay in the present moment, fully aware of the present moment, just notice it as much as you can. Notice it, notice it, notice it. When your attention wanders, bring it back when you can. The fact that it's still the same moment as when I started speaking, as when this body was born, as when all these bodies were born, as when the planet was created. And fast forward into the future, it's going to be the same moment still. It will never end. And there's a relaxation in this when you really kind of get it, that I don't have to struggle. My body and my attention may move around. My attention may move to a thought about the past, or a memory about the past, or my attention may move to my mind worrying about the future, anticipating something from the future. Has the moment, this present moment, changed while that's occurring? Has it gone? If my attention stays on thoughts for a whole hour, has the present moment changed during that hour at all? Does it even need me to recognize it? Really, the present moment. So it isn't something you can do. And I know that's frustrating because I really wanted to know how to do it when I was waking up. How do I stay aware of now? But just to recognize it's always now. It's always now. There's no other thing than that. And it's always here. There's no other place than here, no other time than now. The past and the future only exist in terms of thoughts, and nowhere else in reality do they exist. So just listening to what I'm saying and just taking that in and just really wanting to find out if there's anywhere else to be other than the present moment. Can you actually be anywhere else than the present moment? It takes the hard work out of this then. You know, I managed to get to a point where about 60-70% of the time my attention was on the present moment. And the rest of it, and I just could never make it to 100%. And I gave up trying in the end when I realized this. Okay, done that one already. Okay, next one. Namaste. It's not that I'm not grateful, but somehow thanking you feels like I'm really thanking myself. Or maybe I should see it as thanking source constantly. Anyway, I'm loving my daily visit to the end of suffering inquiry video. What came to me today as I was pondering looking at my children and realizing they are not really beings in form. How are they seen in the silent place of oneness when I am still here? I'm feeling like I don't want to lose the connection while I'm still here and seeing them before me. Okay, so what came to me today as I was pondering, looking at my children and realizing they are not really beings in form. How are they seen in the silent place of oneness when I am still here? Well, are you seeing separate beings? What are you seeing when you look at your children? What is that you're actually seeing? Do you have to see them in separation, or are you seeing something differently already in that? You know, when you look at someone else, what you're really looking at is a body, a human body. Are you really looking at another being, or are you looking at a body? And if you are absent as a separate being, then they must also be absent as separate beings. Because if you're absent as a separate being, all that's left is the everywhereness that's not separate to anything. So you could say that you are seeing the bodies. There's a couple of bodies there that you're seeing. That's all you can say for certainty, isn't it, really? That the self, the immensity of the one being has taken a shape to play as being your children, and you're playing as being a parent, although it doesn't feel like playing sometimes. But are you actually seeing your children anyway? Are you going to lose anything in this? Can you lose anything when you really sort of look like this? Have you ever really been looking as one person looking at another person, one being looking at another being? Or is there just eyes in one body looking at another body? What are you really looking at anyway? Where are your children actually? Are they that body in particular? Or are they their thoughts in their head? Or do your children exist in your head through your thoughts that you have about them? And in anybody else that happens to be thinking about them? Where do they actually exist anyway? There's a body there with a name attached to that body. But where are they actually? Don't they also exist in every teacher that's ever taught them at school, and all of their friends who think about them, and everyone they're connected to on social media, and everyone they've ever met ever that may think about them? Can you really look at someone and say, this is my child and this is only where they are? I know it's a really strange way to think about things, but it really made it a lot simpler for me when I began to recognize what I'm calling this person, this being, whether it's your child or your partner or your parent, is really just a body. And what they actually are, their individuality, is kind of spread all over the place. Like, you're sitting there now, but if we talk about you after you've gone, are you still here? It's a weird way, isn't it, to think, not that I'm going to talk about you, but you can see hopefully the point I'm trying to get across. Similarly with yourself, are you the one looking at them? Where do you exist? You have your own thoughts about your own self inside your own head. And now I'm talking about you. So does that mean that you also exist in here too? And it's not a very satisfying answer for mind, is it? Because mind wants this is how it is. But as you begin to dissolve the rigid ways you've been thinking about other beings, then you lose this fear of losing something. You can't lose seeing them as the self. Recognizing they don't really exist in one place. The body does. The body is in one place and the body moves around, goes to school and then comes home or whatever. But where is that being? Can we really confine that being that we're saying is my child to only one body? And what about the food that they've eaten? 2 minutes before they eat it, it's food. 2 minutes later, it's my child. It's in their body. It's being assimilated. It's not so black and white then, is it? It's not so clear. And, this really creeped me out a little bit when I began to think about it too much. But the whole point of what I'm trying to say is that it's not, there's certain ways we have of thinking about people that are very rigid ways of thinking. Still awake at the back? So I would spend some time looking at what it is that you're really looking at. Are you really looking at your children? What are you calling your children? Not their name, but it's really a body that you're looking at only. The being is everywhere anyway, the one being. Even on a relative level, as we're saying, they exist in all these different heads, all these different thought processes. Food for thought. Okay, did I do that one? Yes. Okay. Hi, Helen. I am deeply grateful for the clarity and generosity of your teaching. I feel a bit stuck, however, and hope you can help. I often have a sense of presence, stillness or silence, but I feel like I'm in them, like an object in space. Not that I am them. How do I get beyond this? Thank you so much. So I really remember this, phase in my own awakening where I could listen to the silence. It was stunningly loud, and everywhere I could hear it, everywhere I went, everywhere. Stillness, consciousness, beingness, whatever we're calling it. And it was very clear to me that it still felt very much like I was listening to it. There were two things. There was the silence and me. And it seemed very visceral and real. I'm here and the silence is everywhere else. I'm listening to it. It's two things. So how do we go beyond that? Because we can become a very good meditator at listening to silence. But taking that next step then to dissolve that separation, how do we do that? And for the sake of this, I would just advise you to, when you're sitting and you're hearing the silence or the stillness, as you said here, presence, and you feel like you're in them. Again, if we look honestly, all you can really say is that your body is in them. Where are you in the presence, in the silence? If you really look and try to find, then you'll find that you are absent without leave as a separate being. All of this is held together on assumption. It seems like, it feels like, you've even used those words, I still feel like I'm in them. So when I'm sitting and listening to silence, it has an effect on my body, a feeling in my body. The silence has a feeling effect, some response happening in my body when I listen to it, or the consciousness of the presence, whatever we want to call it. But that's the body. What about you? Where are you? Can you actually find yourself as an entity sitting inside the silence? When you really look, it seems to be that you're inside the silence listening, or separate to the silence listening to it. And it'll take you as long to transcend this as you are determined to see it. Determined to see it by no longer accepting seems like, feels like as evidence. It feels like I'm a separate being. But can I prove that there's me and it? When I really look for myself in the silence, what do I find? A body, thoughts, emotions maybe. Is there anyone to which they belong? Can you find, and we can do this right now, can you find the separate being that seems to be here? Actually, can you actually locate it, say where it actually is and where it isn't? When I look for myself, I find only emptiness. Yet there still seems to be, I find only silence, there still seems to be someone here talking. How does that work? But I have looked and proved to myself that there isn't actually someone in the silence. I can't find them. So I would suggest looking, seeing if you can actually, that the only evidence you will accept is a direct experience that seems to be and feels like are not concrete enough evidence for you to accept from this point forward. If you really want to kind of, you won't lose that sense of someone. It's still going to be there, a sense of someone. While the body's here, there'll be a sense of someone, because there'll be thoughts and emotions and experiencing going on through the body. But just be certain that there isn't anyone living in it. There's only the silence. There's nobody living in the body, and there's nobody listening to the silence. When I try to find that one that's listening to silence, all I find is silence. What is aware of awareness? The great awareness, the one being the consciousness. What is it that notices that? Is there really someone? Yes, there's the body. Yes, there's thoughts. Yes, there's emotions. But is that enough for you now? I got to a point myself where I had to prove, if this separate being is really here, let me find it. Let me find it, actually. Over and over again, I found only the silence, only the silence. Or consciousness or emptiness, whatever we're calling it. So if you look, you won't find it. And it seems strange that looking and not finding is the right answer. Usually we're taught that we should be able to find something as the right answer. But looking and not finding a separate being, and looking and not finding, looking and not finding, again and again and again and again and again and again. The only conclusion you're left with experientially is there is only silence. A body walking around in silence and silence. And even that body is the silence, really, but for the purpose of this, you don't need to go there yet, unless you want to, you know. So can you find definitively, can you prove in your experience that there really is two? And when you can't, when you find only the one silence, and there's just a vague sense of someone being here, you cannot ever actually locate. That sense of someone is not a mistake. It's your functionality in the world, as we were saying before. That it's not something to be removed, this sense of someone, but just to be clear, it's only a sense. It's not really actually a separate being, not really there in that way. All there is then is silence, listening to itself already. Consciousness being conscious of itself already. Awareness being aware of itself, awareness. It's just felt like a personal I, and it might still feel like a personal I, but you will know because you can't find this personal I. Okay, so look and try to find it, and look and try to find it. And the absence of it will prove that there's only the one, there never was two. This whole thing hangs on through lack of investigation. Only taking that it seems to be that I'm here in the silence, it seems to be. And that whole illusion perpetuates from it seems to be, it feels like. Okay, got through a few there. So if there are any questions online or in the room here, I invite you to put your hand up. And okay, we'll start with Elliot. Just stick your hand up in between if you have a question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi.
Just give me 1 second, Elliot.
Oh yeah, you're good.
Sorry.
That's okay.
It's not coming through the speaker for some reason. Okay, say something now.
Hi.
No, that's not working.
No. Okay.
Okay, well, just leave it for now. I'll turn this up and yeah. Lovely. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Elliot.
No, don't be sorry. Thank you. It's great that I'm asking this first question because it's like the question that I have two questions. So please definitely cut me off when I'm like halfway through my allotted time. But the first question was the question that was just asked pretty much. Like, how do I find, how can I experience? Well, that's the thing, right? Like everything that would tell me that I am separate appears as an object, right? Yeah. Which isn't actually proof that that which is seeing the objects is
it's
separate.
Nothing to do with you, is it? It's what you're seeing as the object, yeah.
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 So how can I know? So it seems like the best I can do is get to an I don't know about whether or not I'm separate, or because there is an aspect of my experience that I can say with 100% surety that exists. Like I know that I'm real. I know
Yeah.
that there is something that is speaking and there is something that is receiving the words that are being spoken.
So you know with certainty that you exist. And the only question, which is good, you know, the
Yeah.
only question is, what do you exist as? As a someone, or, you know, an object of a someone, or something else? So
Yeah, and that's what I mean by, oh, sorry. No,
when
sorry.
you look for yourself,
Mhm.
what do you find?
Well, that's what I mean by, when I look for myself for evidence that I am a separate person inhabiting this body. Is that what you're asking me?
Let's strip away anything that's going to disappear. So anything that's temporary, temporarily, let's get rid of anything. In our definition, if you want to find out what we are, what you actually are,
Mm-hmm.
then anything that's going to go, we won't include that in your definition for now. So the body is going to go at some point, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Thoughts coming and going, they're not permanent.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions coming and going, experiences coming and going. Yeah, you with me so far?
I'm with you. Yeah.
Even the waking state that you're using to say these words now is going to go, isn't it? It's dependent upon the body. You know, you can't, if I lose you at any point, you must tell me so that we can work through it experientially, okay?
I seem to be holding on to a lot of these. It's like what I was about to say is I can see that I use these sensations in my body as evidence that there's someone here.
Is that enough evidence for you now, though? Because yes, there's sensations in your body. We're not arguing about that. We're both agreed on two things here.
Yeah.
One is that you exist, and two is that there are currently sensations going on in your body.
Yeah.
Does that give you proof that you're someone, that you're an object?
No. I mean no.
Okay, so throw out the sensations out of your definition then. If it doesn't give you proof, get rid of it. Don't count it in your definition. What do you find when you look for yourself? The one that the sensations are happening to. What do you find when you look for that? Can you find an object to someone?
No, there's no object. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
three things we agree upon now. Firstly, that you exist. And secondly, there's a body with sensations going on. And thirdly, that you are not an object.
Yes.
Because if you were, you should be able to find that object. Well, I'm this big, you know, I'm around my body or something. You should be able to find it in your experience, that separate someone. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now imagine in your mind, if you want to, that I showed you a map of the universe. If we could do such a thing. Right, here's a map of the entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to point to on this map where you are. Can you do that if you're not a separate being? Where would you point to? You can only point to where your body is, but not to where you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you are not somewhere on that map, and you're definitely not nowhere on that map because you do exist. Are you still with me there, or do you want me to go over that bit?
So no, I one step before, I could see myself not being willing to let go of this idea that I couldn't appear as an object. Like I just could see, like I could see what was being asked and I said no.
So I want to get even closer with this now. You say that there's something that you can't let go of before you accept that you're not an object. Or I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But we've already got rid of thoughts out of our self-definition.
Okay. Apparently.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
So is anything that's happening in the body, thoughts, resistance, epiphanies even, anything to do with the space in which your body is appearing? If something says, I'm not willing to let go of this, is that you or is that your mind?
Well, mind. It would have to be mind.
So, yep, it would have to be mind. So what do you need to do to let go of, to admit, or not? What does it matter to you whether your mind admits this or not? Because here's a cheat. My mind never, ever admitted that I wasn't a separate being. It just wouldn't. It seemed like it had too much to lose, but I kept experiencing, I can't find myself as a someone. Our mind says that there are only two options for existence: existing somewhere or not existing at all. That's the two options that mind works with. But there is a third option, existing as everywhereness. So you've told me that you do exist and you don't exist somewhere. That only leaves one option, category 3. What we've just done there, you need to run it through your thought process again and again and again until you see that if I don't exist somewhere on this map, I must be everywhere. I do exist. I am here because I can hear these words right now. I can see through my senses. I know what my eyes are seeing. But I don't exist as someone somewhere. So the only other option, because I've tried and I can't find that someone, only other option, as unlikely as it feels right now, must be that you're infinite. You don't need your mind to accept that because it never will.
Yeah, it's just the experiential, the result of this investigation experientially.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's enough to look
yeah,
and to not find a separate being over and over again. Right?
Because like I can tell. So this is also interesting, right? I mean, I can tell you like that I know for sure, right, that any object that would appear is not a candidate for my being, for me. But yeah.
You only need to be sure of one thing. Let's keep it really simple. Are you an object?
No.
And if you're not, the only other option is the pure subjectivity. There's only two categories of things, isn't there? An object or the infinite space in which those objects appear or seem to appear. If you're not an object,
yeah,
what actually are you then? If you keep your inquiry focused on that really simple thing, really simple, what's the other option for me if I'm not an object, a someone, a separate someone? You get really interested in that. What is, if I can't point to myself on a map somewhere, eventually I'm going to come to really know I must be the entire map, actually, because I am here.
So it's just, okay. Yeah.
Just stick to something really simple because your mind will be doing everything it can to distract you right now.
Okay.
Do not look at this at all. Avoid it at all costs. This is really dangerous and bad, and only bad things are going to come from it, it will say,
And can you formulate that one more time? Just simply like, what if I were to ask myself something to start off this investigation? It's,
am I a someone, an object? And you look and you see if you can find an object as someone that's separate to everything else.
okay.
And you can't find it. You are here, but you're not here as an object. So what am I then? What remains? You know, it became clear to me that there's only two types of thing. Thing isn't the right word, but I'm limited by language. There's either things that are a thing, or there's that which is not a thing.
Mhm.
If I've looked and proved to myself I'm not a thing, the only other option for me, as unlikely or whatever as it seems at that moment, is that I am that which is everywhere.
Mm.
Our mind says, when I feel like the everywhereness, then I'll admit it. But it's the other way around. I have to keep proving that I'm not somewhere, proving that I'm not just somewhere, proving that I'm not just somewhere. Then I begin to feel more like the everywhereness.
Mm. Okay.
You see how we've got it backwards? When I feel like I'm infinite, then I'll admit it, says mind. It never, ever happens that way, ever.
Mm. Okay, thank you. Can I ask you one tiny question? Do I have time?
Real quick, yeah.
Super quick. So it's about contemplation. And you can literally just.
Didn't we do this last time?
We did, but it's a clarification on contemplation.
Yeah, that's all right. I just wondered if I was dreaming or something.
Oh, no. Yeah, definitely. You probably are dreaming, but it's.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, right. So the two questions are, the two little asterisk points are, is it important what question you get down to when you're doing contemplation? Or is it like, because the need is not always so clear what I am needing in that moment. So I just usually take my best shot and I follow the rabbit hole down. Yeah. And then the second little part is, I notice that I'm doing the contemplations because I want to get the object, because I think that as a result of doing the contemplations, I will get what I want. Mm-hmm. So, okay.
Well, that's going to be going on, right? There's always going to be some part of us that contemplates because we want to get out of suffering, or we want to get something like peace, and that's okay. But there's always also going to be another part of us that's contemplating for a very different reason. Just because I want to know what's true, actually. I'd like to know what's true. I'd like to know if this assumption, this question I'm asking is really true. Is this true? Mm-hmm. There's two motivations there, and that's okay, isn't it? Mm. Like if we're all honest, we all really want to wake up because we hope it might make us someone special or something, right?
Yeah, or to have like a life, yeah.
We glow in the dark or something,
Yeah.
And we want to wake up because it's what we really already are. So there's always two motivations in that. As to the question, I would follow the emotion, formulate your question around what the emotion is telling you. So fear is saying I'm not safe. Shame is saying I don't deserve to exist. Is that true? Anger is saying it's not fair. I'm blocked. I can't get what I want. Some very basic idea in that.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All that will vanish if you stay with what we talked about earlier.
Okay. That sounds even better.
That's the quick route.
Okay. Sounds good. Lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of hands up here. Any hands in the room? Yep. I'll take Colleen, then I'll come to you after. Yep. So Colleen, when you're ready.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
I have so many questions. I'm going to try to I wanted to wake up so I didn't have to be human anymore.
Guess what? Turns around. That's where we all start, right? I want to get away from this mind and body.
Yeah.
It's not going
I didn't
well.
know that was it, but guess what? I'm still human. Yeah. The thing that has helped me with all of this, though, for sure, is Well, I mean, it has so much to do with like how much free will you think you have. I mean, you know, I spend a lot of the day kind of watching what my body's going to do next. And I can't tell you what my body's going to do next. I can't tell you what my next thought is. You know, and so that to me is a universalness that is hard to deny if you really, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm just realizing this right now, listening to your talk, that's what brings me into this, knowing that I'm not this little thing that thought it had free will. You know, I can look back now and see that awareness and the universe, whatever you want to call it, was always taking care of me, but it had nothing to do with I hate words. The thing that still bothers me is all this talk about the word bliss. And I just like, what the hell is bliss? You know, it's like, I have a peace that I haven't had so far in my life. I know I have that.
Imagine if you could, imagine if every possible reason for you to feel fear or hatred or anything had gone from inside you. Anything, a total absence of fear. And that doesn't mean your body didn't feel it every now and again, but you couldn't identify with it at all. Anything like that ever again. Wouldn't that kind of leave you feeling really good? Maybe bliss and fear are like two ends of one spectrum, and we give them labels like there's some imaginary point in between. And maybe this peace is kind of in the middle of fear at one end and peace, and then what we're calling bliss at the other end. Just like feeling really, really good, really good. Like everything's absolutely fine and I'm safe and I'm loved and all of that. You know, maybe that's what that peace is deepening into. It starts off as peace, doesn't it? In an absence of suffering.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've heard you say that, you know, all you can go really by is there more, is there less fear? Is there more peace? Is there more a feeling of, I mean, this has been such a slow process, you know. Sorry for the people who are hoping this is really fast. Maybe it will be for you, but this has been.
You can speed this up by never assuming that you're there. Yes, you're experiencing much more peace and clarity and wisdom, and it's developing into love and then into joy and then into bliss from there. You know, and wherever you're at along that, your body mind is at along that sliding scale is just where it's at. But if you can cultivate an attitude of however good it is right now, there's got to be, there must be more because I am infinite. Not traveling further, but
I use that.
How much deeper into this moment can I go? And
I use that
kind of
contemplation. How does consciousness want to expand? How is this change bringing me more?
But even before that, am I really even experiencing the fullness of this moment? Like, am I totally, as if you've stopped just floating along the surface and now you're in the depths of the ocean, but realizing it's a bottomless ocean. No matter how far you dive down, there's always more. And that, so you kind of become comfortable with never fully getting there in the end, you know what I mean? Just really, however good I feel, the next moment's going to feel even better, and it's never going to stop increasing. And if it's stopped increasing, it's because I've kind of hit some thought that I'm there now, or something like that, you know?
Right.
Which we all do subtly, of course, you know, wow, it can't get any better than this. Well, yeah, it can actually.
Well, I think it can get way better than this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it already has gotten better. The other thing I wanted to ask you real quick is, like, you said something in another thing that just fascinated me. You said thought comes to realization of its true source.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of, I don't know, blew up my head a little bit.
It's not, silence is just silence. And it's really the thought journey that comes to conclusion, isn't it? So thought says, I am this body. And then thought says, I am also my mind and I am my emotions. And then we end up in satsang, and thought says, I can see I'm not this body and I'm not my mind. And then thought says, I am the infinite formlessness. And then thought says, I am all of it. And then thought says, I am beyond any thought definition. And meanwhile, the silence is just exactly as it's always been. Always. But thought's gone on this whole profound journey and come back around to a recognition of itself.
Yeah, I love that. I just love that. I love you so much. Thank you.
I love you too. Yeah, thank you for your questions. Good to talk to you.
You too.
We'll come to you, Laurie, next after this question here.
I have to
comment.
apologise because I couldn't change my train. So, and I'd lost track of time in this talk. So I am going to have to dash off. So just when you see me leaving, that's why. Just this once, because I'll drive in future. Out the way. So there's always a paradox here of whatever's going on in the function of the body, whether it's rushing for a train or panicking or getting nervous. The paradox is that the silence is always silent and always present, and so there's two as one.
Yeah.
Right. When I come to talks,
Oh, one as two, appearing as two.
yeah,
I think that's what you meant anyway.
When I come to talks here, and also with other certain speakers I've been to, there's a tangible difference, or it seems there's a tangible difference in the energy, which I don't experience other than when I'm in talks. Can you say something about that?
We can, being with someone who has gone beyond their ability to believe any thoughts, gone beyond to believe any thoughts, doesn't mean thoughts are absent completely. They might be, might not be, but they don't have any ability to automatically believe them anymore. Then the life force flows unimpeded, or much less impeded. There's always a small resistance while it's a sense of duality, but anyway, is flowing unimpeded through that body-mind vehicle, and it's kind of blasting out in excess. Most people are running on empty in terms of life force. And when you're around that type of being, it's like a tuning fork. If you have two tuning forks and you strike one, the other one starts to sing vibration, and they come into a resonance, a harmony, which is what they call a transmission. Traditionally, put my teeth in, been called the transmission from teacher to student, but it's really just, here's where you could go in your energy and your vibration, that we don't realize it's possible until we experience it at first, because we're so used to how it feels to experience and believe our thoughts, which diminishes the life force energy flowing through. And we're also not used to being around someone who doesn't need anything from us, or doesn't want anything from us, and isn't trying to change us at all. So even if I'm sat here going, I really want you to deepen your experience and get this, then I'm still trying to change your experience. So if there's no intention coming from that being at all, then you begin to immediately resonate with them where they're at in this higher place.
Mm.
First, that effect is temporary, but kind of consciousness gets a taste of that. I want that all the time, actually.
Mm.
And I want to feel like that all the time. And it gives us the kind of courage and the strength to question certain thoughts that we haven't questioned before,
Mm.
that we might not even know that we're still believing. The very fact there's a difference of how I feel when I'm in as a satsang like this,
Mm.
and then I go home and feel different. Why is that happening? Well, I
Mm.
must go back to believing something very subtly without realizing
Mm. Mm.
that's kind of diminishing the overall, because I'll feel as good as I'm allowing the life force
Mm.
through the body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I did send you a long detailed question, which kind of
I didn't quite get to that.
no, because I also sent another one saying, don't worry if there's too many questions, because I kind of got it answered this morning. But you've just explained something there that the question in a simple form could have said, which is, can I go deeper in this awakening? And obviously, if I'm sensing a different energy when I'm going to speak, then there is a depth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, once you feel like you're going to want to have that more and more, and then you're going to want to have that all the time,
Mm.
then you're going to want to have it effortlessly by yourself without
Mm.
needing anyone else
Mm.
to elicit that energy.
Mm.
And that's natural, isn't it? That once you've tasted that, you want it.
Mm. Mm.
And it was the same for me. So, okay, what do I have to do then to feel like this all the time?
Mm.
What thoughts am I believing subtly going back into?
Mm.
And it's just that openness to kind of recognize if my experience is changing, if it's fluctuating, I'm feeling better sometimes than others, then there must be something I'm still holding on to inside. And as you said tonight here, that you can never stop going deeper. Even for me now, every day is deeper.
Mm.
You see clearly once and for all that you're formless and you've never been a form, but you can keep seeing that again and again and again,
Yes,
deeper and
yeah.
better and clearer and more powerfully.
Yeah,
That goes
that's
on
what happened
forever.
this morning. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a
Because there's a sudden
Yeah.
openness. Hang on a minute,
Yeah.
this might not be all of it.
yeah.
Because we get to this peace and understanding we were just talking about with Colleen, and that's great, isn't it? Because we're not suffering anymore, and we stay
Mm.
there for a while, we hang out there for a while,
Mm.
but then something goes, what if there's more?
Mm.
Not more out there, but more
Mm.
here to kind of dive into. And that's what's happening for you now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I can't go into it now because there's not enough time, unfortunately. But I thought, because there's always that paradox of the silence and the peace is always there.
Yeah.
What more could there be than that, really?
That silence and the peace that's always there is showing up as this human being that's ever deepening
Mm.
in its seeing of truth.
Mm.
And it's a
Mm.
beautiful paradox. And it's completely natural from that place, isn't it?
Mm.
I absolutely am that and have always been and could
Mm.
never not be. And I'm always seeing it clearer and expressing it clearer,
Mm.
you know, in terms of life force and everything.
Yeah, obviously the mind can't understand it because,
Nope.
you know,
He'll
like,
try.
yeah, absolutely. But and the seeking stopped in that way because the mind's just like a labyrinth of loops. But coming
It
into
stopped
that,
racing ahead for me, like trying to get somewhere. And then it very subtly turned into trying to see clearer. Is there more here to see? And I began to realize I can never get to the end of that. That wasn't a bad discovery. That was joyous, you know, that it's always going to be deeper and richer and fuller and living as this clearer and clearer and clearer. That's just going to mature more and more, you know, for the rest of the body's existence.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
And that openness, that's where love and joy comes from, because I'm finally open again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay. Laurie, when you're ready.
Hi, Helen.
Hi.
I'm the one who asked the question about the children, being able
Okay.
to see your children. And actually, you've answered every question I've written into you, so thank you very much. Most of my questions involve wanting to really know what that bliss is. You know, I've been taking what I was talking about with my children farther with my husband. I want to ask you what it's like for you when you relate to your husband now. I mean, how is it different? And I have this fear that it's not going to work, that, it's not going to be a relationship that will be accepted. You know what I mean?
Accepted by you or by
By my
them, or
husband, by my
okay.
husband, that I won't be in the same world, you know what I mean? That I won't be approachable,
Astonishingly,
I guess. Okay.
most beings, even those that are very close around you, won't even know that anything's happened to you, that you see anything any differently. I know that sounds like, really? Most people just know that I am, if I take my close family, they know that I'm really happy and quite peaceful and not really fazed by anything anymore. But they don't have any idea that I see them different to how I used to, or I see myself different to how I used to. And so, my mind worries about that. Like, how can I be in a marriage, or how can I relate to my parent or my children, or how can I be with my friends if I don't see them as separate beings? Can we even have a relationship like that?
Exactly.
And is there such a thing? How can you have a relationship with one being? It is, but it's more like you're looking at the other person in the relationship as you're both expressions of this one being, and you're using this play of a relationship to deepen the love and the friendship and the intimacy and the connection and all of that you can experience. And the one being can evolve even faster in a relationship structure, because there's a capacity for a little friction and a little disagreement, a lot of disagreement sometimes, but working through that comes a deeper love and connection, doesn't it? That's possible. So it's kind of like nothing really changes. You're still showing up as this woman married to this person, but everything's changed inside. How you're seeing it has changed.
Yeah, this is really good. Thank you. I feel like I know this, but I need to be told 100 times. And it seems like every single question, every single thing you've said is pointed to this same issue tonight. It's like everything, there's just no separation anywhere.
And there never has been. So what mind imagines might go wrong once if I don't look at my sister as my sister, if I know she is the one being, mind says, how am I going to relate to her even? Will I even want to talk to her? Or, it has all these questions and doubts and worries. But from the self's perspective, nothing is changing. You're just seeing clearly. You've never been separate, and they've never been separate. So it actually functions a lot better because you're seeing clearly. Mm-hmm. And all the thoughts that come with what you want from that being, what you need from that being, they all begin to drop away, and more you're just enjoying being with that person.
Awesome.
And showing up as you are and letting them be as they are. So it actually has the opposite effect of what mind is worrying about.
I suspected.
It tends to be that way, doesn't it?
I love you so much, Helen.
I love you too. Good questions. Okay, so we will leave it there for this evening. And there we go. Thank you for all your intelligent, wonderful questions. Namaste.